Hello and welcome to For Future Generations, episode 72. It is the 19th of July, folks. We are more than halfway through the year. We are more than halfway to Christmas. Yeah, some of my pre-show ramens making their appearance. But have a very interesting show for you today. Sean and I were talking. By the way, I'm Jeff Waugh.
Yeah.
Co-host Sean. Sean, how are you, dude?
I am well. Today is actually my daughter's 6th birthday. So that's what we've been doing. Yeah, that's what we've been doing all day is birthday stuff. So
Well, then her birthday is like the day after mine because mine was yesterday. So
yeah.
Cool stuff.
So happy birthday
cool
to you.
Stuff. All right. But Sean and I were talking before the show or this week, and we said, we haven't ever done a show on what is a nation. Could you define a nation? It's kind of like, Sean, you remember Charlie Kirk, or was it was Matt Walsh actually who started it, I think, the whole what is a woman. And Charlie Kirk took that and ran with it. And it really seems like the question now is, what is a nation? What is a country? What is a people? And it's going to be hard to answer that for some people, unfortunately. I mean, it shouldn't be that hard, but it is. So we figured, we haven't done a show on it yet, not a dedicated show. We've talked about it, of course, in passing, but we wanted to do a dedicated show and maybe talk about some people's opinions and some definitions, throw some ideas around, and we will do that. But before we do that, we want to have a word from our sponsor, who is Deus Vult lapel pins. Guys, you know it, I know it, we all know it. Deus Vult lapel pins, very best lapel pins on the market. Everybody loves them. And why wouldn't you love them? Because he's got the goods.
You wouldn't love them because you are a fat boomer pastor who goes on Twitter and says bad things about lapel pins, which has happened recently. So I have to real quick applaud our sponsors. What's the word I'm looking for? Presence. His online presence is very, very well done. He gets a lot of heat from people. I'm putting pins on your lapel. What the heck? Okay. Dude.
Of all the things to get mad at,
I know.
It's like, are you really? Are you really in danger from my lapel pin? Is this really threatening you? But yeah, he takes it in stride. He memes, but he also doesn't take himself too seriously. But
it's a deadly combo.
Good stuff. It's a deadly combo. Texas Lone Bulwark pin is in stock. Texas Bros,
man.
Get that pin. What are you doing? If you don't have it already, why not? The Awakened Saxon pin, the 1-inch, it is sold out. That was very popular. It went almost immediately. The No Quarter Battle Flag is in stock. The Kansas pin, which looks like just,
a square.
Sorry, Kansas Bros, but it looks like it's just a rectangle, but that is Kansas. I guess you had to be there. If you're from there, I guess. The Bonnie Blue Florida, the Florida Lone Bulwark, Texas Lone Bulwark is on here twice.
Is it?
It's a 1.25 inch and 1.5. Oh no,
that's America.
Sorry. My bad. Yeah, so
that's all of Ain't
one
Texas.
Is larger than the others. But the Tennessee Crusader lapel pin, very cool. I wear that even though I'm not from Tennessee. I just like it. California. And of course, we also have, I'll scroll down to it. We have stickers. I have to get all the way down here. Stickers for your post-millennial assault vehicle, your people mover, your kid van, your bus, what have you, whatever it is. Get some stickers. That way you can tell your 15-passenger van apart from all the other 15-passenger vans in the church parking lot. So we have base states, every inch of Idaho, every inch of Alabama, Florida, Missouri, Texas, all the best states, all the important states. And there are more, of course, but, the important ones right off the bat. But with that said, folks, don't forget to use our code, which is FFGDV26 for 10% off at checkout, or use our link in the description below, and that discount will automatically populate and be added to your order. So thank you, Days Volt Lapel Pins, for sponsoring the show, and we will get back to the subject at hand, which is what is a nation? Now, Sean, you and I were talking a little bit before the show, not getting into it too deeply, but FIFA, the World Cup, that got finished up this year, or this week. Today, actually, the semi or the third place game was yesterday. My wife took me out to a German restaurant, which I absolutely love, and they just happened to be playing the third place game between England and France. So I got to watch that, and England was beating up on them bad. Fun to watch the French get beat. Doesn't matter what the game is. If the French are taking a hiding, I'm there for it. And then,
why not?
But Spain and Argentina played the final today, and spoilers, Spain won by 1 point in the extra time. Now, I didn't get to watch that game. I don't pay for it, so I have to be somewhere where it's playing. But interesting anyway. Fun to hear the stories. But it kind of raised some questions. You're seeing, first off, let me add this to the stage so y'all can see what I'm talking about. But if you just Google, FIFA finale, and this is what you get: Spain 1, Argentina 0, and you can shoot off some fireworks. Fun stuff. Red and yellow for Spain. Very, very cool. But 1 point, narrow victory.
Yeah.
And but notice all these countries, they're represented by national flags.
Yep.
And they're all representing, these players on these teams, the Spanish team, the Argentina team, they're not on the Argentina team all the time. The World Cup's only every 4 years. And the rest of the time, they're bopping around to whatever country they want to be on. Whoever's the highest bidder, really. They get bought and sold, just like baseball players, just like football players. Once you get out of college, once you get into the pros, you might have a player that gets traded 3, 4 5 different teams in his life, and how can he be loyal to a place? How can he be loyal to a team if you're just scooting around all the time? And that's the same thing here. Same thing with soccer. But just kind of raises some questions here. I pulled up Wikipedia, good old Wikipedia, to read about FIFA World Cup. And the FIFA World Cup is an international association football association. That's where we get the word soccer. So it's soccer competition among senior men's national teams of the members of the the sports global governing body, yada, yada, yada. And you can read on, but I won't. But, I just clicked through to the men's national teams because there was something very interesting about this article. And I'm not going to read all of it. I just want to go down here to this highlighted section. This list excludes other teams described by their supporters as national, which represent specific ethnic groups, cultural historic regions, separatist or autonomous movements, speakers of specific languages, and micronations. These teams have historically participated in matches and tournaments outside FIFA's recognition, though some of them have sporadically or regularly played in friendly matches and tournaments against FIFA members. So already we have a disagreement about the definition of what is a nation. For those of you who thought, let's leave politics aside, I just want to watch football, I'm afraid you can't get away from it. What is a nation affects football, affects, soccer, affects whatever game it is that you're trying to watch. It's really a part of life. But anyway, they have a list of countries that they consider national teams that are members of their association. But the other thing I wanted to look at is what did these teams look like? So here is the Spain team. This is the team that just won. They formed their team in 2025. November is when they qualified. This is the team. And there's a couple oddballs, maybe one odd guy out, one African. The rest of these guys look pretty Spanish, look very European, right? They all kind of look more or less from the same nation, the same ethnic group. But are you allowed to define a nation as an ethnic group? Is that really what makes them a country? But here's Argentina, who made second place. Look at all those white guys. I mean, Argentina, people joke about Argentina being, the Europe of South America. Heavily settled by Europeans. I was looking up the numbers a few days ago, and it's something like 8% of the population in Argentina is indigenous. So it's like very similar, actually, to the United States. Actually a little bit higher, because I think ours is like 1 or 2%, which is a lot more than I thought it was when I looked it up. But and then their citizens of African origin is actually even lower than that. It's down to like 2%. So it's almost like they kind of inverted.
Must be nice.
Yeah. It's a white European nation down there in South America. I ran across.
It's actually a very Nazi nation.
Yeah,
the reason behind it being white. Yeah.
Messi, who actually I'm looking in this photo. I'm not seeing him in this photo. I don't know where he's at, but
is he not in there?
He might not be. Let's see, he's number. Isn't he number 9? He's in the Argentina
number
team?
10. I don't know. I want to say he's 10 in everything. Isn't that like his thing, being number 10 in there?
I think so. It's hard to rember. I don't watch this stuff, so I don't stay on top of it. But this is not the full team, I guess. But point is that they are very ethnically homogenous. And they are also extremely racist. Some of their football songs that they were singing about France in the last game was about, the French team that doesn't have any French people on it. And since we're talking about the French team, here you go. There's your French team. Don't they look so French?
Oui.
Yeah. I mean, now France has a lot of Africans on the team, a lot of French-speaking Africans, because they colonized a lot of Africa, a lot of North Africa, and the western coast of Africa. And so they get a lot of these African players on their team. But the thing is, they would say of these African players, they're just as French as you or me. They're now. I agree with them that they are just as French as I am. These just as French as I happen to be. But yeah, the French team has 2 French players and a whole lot of Africans. Now the guy here front and center, that's Mbappe. He's pretty excellent, but he's no Messi. But he is very, very good. But there's your French team, and they lost the 3rd place game to the English team. And you can see DEI, diversification, coming in here in the French team. But for the most part, the the English team is mostly English.
And, do you have the Norwegian team?
I don't have it pulled up, but I could.
They lost too early to have a graphic in this set.
Yeah.
I heard the story I saw around that was they got screwed. That's what everyone was saying.
There's
whether or not that's true.
There have been allegations of corruption in the referees. It looks this year like it actually might be a little more realistic. In this FIFA bracket, Argentina got a very easy, straightforward bracket. Like, they didn't play any top 5 teams until the semifinal. Or was it the quarterfinal? But anyway, till very late. And they had a cakewalk practically all the way to the end of the tournament. And people were talking about, Messi is holding up the team. They have some good footballers on that team, from what I understand. But this is the Norwegian team.
They got their token.
They got one token.
They got a guy underneath him. Yeah.
Yeah, he doesn't look Norwegian. Yeah, no. But yeah, very, very homogenous. And when you the thing that this always makes me wonder about is, are these really Frenchmen? Are these really, the Norwegian team, these people are all at least born in Norway. Here's your French team. And here's a little graphic that I found just kicking around the web of the French national football team and all the countries that they've been born in. And only 3 of them were actually born in France. All of these African guys, they were born in African countries. But they're all French. They're all French. Trust me, bro. They're all French. So the thing that I liked about FIFA when I was a little kid, when I used to actually watch this fairly regularly because I lived in Europe, was you would get to see the nations fight against each other, and they would represent the nations instead of each team just being made up of tons of Africans. And why when we have national teams that are supposed to be representing a nation, are they all just made up of a bunch of foreigners? How do you represent your nation if you're made up of foreigners? Now, I'm thinking this as a teenager. I'm not philosophically minded. I'm not deep into the reading of what is a nation. This is just something that's striking me as a guy who watches the game casually every once in a while. I'm like, why can't all the teams look like this? Yeah. Where, you look at these guys and you're like, yeah, they all look like they represent a country. These people all look like they're from one country. And I found this picture knocking around the web too, which is just proof, guys. Proof that Argentina is a white country. Look at this. These are not famous people. These are just fans in the stands. This is
that's the girl. That's the girl that takes your McDonald's order.
Yeah, that's the cashier. Cameraman found some cute girls and put them on camera. That's what the cameraman's job is. But yeah, that's what Argentina looks like. And Norway. Their team very Norwegian. Their fans very Norwegian.
Yep.
And
front and center is like the most stereotypical. Like this is. Like, that's the guy that if you cast him as a Viking, people be like, that's not Vikings, we're just normal people. And then you post this, like, absolute, like first man looking, like, early man, Cro-Magnon looking dude.
Yeah, that's Holland. And he's 6'5". The dude is just a monster. Absolutely. But just out of curiosity, I popped over to the American Dictionary of the English Language, the official dictionary, which is Webster's 1828, the original. This is what Noah Webster had to say about a nation. I thought this was interesting. A body of people inhabiting the same country or united under the same sovereign or government as the English nation, the French nation. It often happens that many nations are subject to one government, in which case the word nation usually denotes a body of people speaking the same language, or a body that has formerly been under a distinct government, but has been conquered or incorporated with a larger nation. Thus, the Empire of Russia comprehends many nations, as did formerly the Roman and Persian empires. Nation, as its etymology imports, originally denoted a family or race of men descended from a common progenitor, like tribe, but by immigration, conquest, and intermixture of men of different families, this distinction is in most countries lost. Now, I do not like this definition. I tend to like Noah Webster. I tend to like the 1828 Webster Dictionary because it gives us kind of a glimpse into an older understanding of some words. But I had some beef with this, especially this section about the Russia, right? The empire, thus the empire of Russia comprehends many nations, as did formerly the Roman and Persian empires. Now, to me, Sean, I would say a nation and an empire are two distinct things.
Yes.
And Webster here is kind of sneaking in empire as a synonym of nation, just a larger version of a nation.
I would disagree. I think what he's trying to say is that, the thus is him saying, like, continuing that thought. So he's saying that, nation usually is, or, originally is this people of common descent, which I would say it still is. But and he's saying through conquering and whatever, you end up with empires. And so I think what he's trying to say is that the empire of Russia comprehends many nations. When he says that, he's saying that I don't know the entire history of that region, but I would say as within our lifetimes, or at least my lifetime, well, a very small part of my lifetime, you had the USSR, right? The USSR was an empire.
Right.
It comprised
multiple
nations like Afghanistan was part of the USSR, at least on paper. All the Stan countries were all these Russian satellites. Is the Iron Curtain, right? But that was part of their empire, but it wasn't the same nation. You could even say that modern Afghanistan is an empire because there are many nations within that we've talked about.
The confines that we consider Afghanistan,
Afghanistan is a great example of that because you have Turkmen people who have a very annoying roach named after them that has taken over Texas for whatever reason. Look those up. They're weird, dude. They're like blood red roaches, dude. Very annoying Turkmen roaches. And you've got Pashtuns. That's what Afghanistan is supposed to be named after. You just got all these people groups, but then you've got like Turkmenistan, which is supposed to be
all Turks,
just a singular nation of Turkmen people. Yeah. So I don't know, dude. Like, I think what he's trying to say is that, like he would say America is an empire because, or at least this is what a lot of our Southern nationalist type people will say is that, well, America is not actually a nation. It's an empire comprised of many nations. So they would say, the South is its own nation. I think defining that in 2026 is kind of tough, but you could do it. Some
but
guys
essentially
purity spiral out of that.
Yeah, the real thing that he's emphasizing is that they are under the same sovereign or government. That is really where his definition comes from, which is united under the same sovereign or government, as in the English nation or the French nation. Now, hold that thought, because I went ahead and looked up just France. What does Noah Webster have to say about France? And there is no page for France. You can...
as it should be.
I mean, you can look... as I'm typing in here, franchisement.
What's Frank? Well, what's Frank? What does that show up as the top one?
Frank is just, to be brief.
No,
handed.
FRANC. What did that? Because
Yeah.
What shows up when you look that
An
up?
ancient coin of France.
Oh, okay. Okay.
A letter which is exempted from postage. A sty for swine, no longer
the
used.
People. Oh, there you go. The people of Franconia in German.
The people of Franconia in German. Frank, verb transitive, to excerpt, etc., etc. But if you look up, Germany, or if you look up German, this one I thought was funny. Belonging to Germany, a native of Germany. Oh, okay. So let's look up Germany, and does not exist, I'm afraid. Did you mean German or German? But yeah, very, very odd that. So Noah Webster, while I enjoy his dictionary and I enjoy the definitions that he gives for most things, not an exhaustive dictionary by any means. But I thought let's go over to one of my favorite websites, which is ETYM Online, Etim Online, and look up the etymology of the word nation. So from the 1300s, nation, a race of people, large group of people with common ancestry and language. From Old French, nation, birth, rank, descendants, relatives, country, homeland, 12th century. And directly from Latin, nationem, nominative natio, birth, origin, breed, stock, kind, species, race of people, tribe, literally that which has been born. So we get from that same root of natus, nasi, we get the word natal, like your neonatal intensive care unit, or anything having to do with babies, nativity. Every Christmas we celebrate that. That is just the Latin word for to be born, or a child who has just been born. That's where the word nation comes from. And that will be relevant here in a little bit when we start getting into some of the discussions that have to do with where nations come from.
Yeah, so, there's a thing. I was reading this talking about, I've been studying the word faith and what it means, how it's used in the Bible. And there's a fallacy. I'm trying to remember what they call it, like the root word fallacy or something like that, as if the idea is like, well, just because a word comes from somewhere doesn't mean it actually means that. Mm-hmm. But that's so absurd. Like, I understand what that's supposed to mean. Like, for instance, butterfly. Like, there's not actual dairy involved in a butterfly, right?
Right. Mm-hmm.
But fly comes from, well, it flies.
Fliegen. Yeah.
Right? Mm-hmm. That's why it's called that. Like, there, we put something next to it to make it, to make a new word, where we're creating a new word, or a new name for something. But the idea that that's a fallacy, that looking into the etymology of something is a fallacy, is just absurd, because we do that to this day. When we go to make up a word, like, we're like, hey, this thing needs a proper word in the English language for it that can go in the dictionary. A lot of the times we just look up the Greek or Latin. How would you say this in Greek or Latin, and make a compound word, not German style where it's a whole sentence long.
Yeah.
But, what would be a good, well, like, for instance, we did one that is not, it's not a term or an idea that I like, but it's a good example. Polyamorous.
Mm-hmm.
Right? So we get poly from, is it poly comes from Greek and amorous comes from Latin? Am I getting that right? So correct. We took, which you shouldn't do that. You shouldn't just take Greek and Latin and smash them together like, oh, you got your chocolate in my peanut butter kind of thing. But that's an old commercial before your time, kids. But that's what we do to this day. When we have to come up with a new term, you just take words that already have meaning, you put them together. That etymology does matter, because, I mean, you find it when you look up, like I was saying with the word faith. In Greek, you have a word family, but pistos is one of them. That's, I want to say, the noun version of it. And it comes from the word patho, which is to persuade. You're trying to persuade somebody, or you trust something, like you've been persuaded, so you trust in this thing. The Bible uses it both ways. That etymology matters because you can see how they would take that word for persuade or trust and then change it a little bit to mean faith, which is essentially like what you've been persuaded of or what you trust is what you have faith in. You could see why they would do that. And so there's meaning to that stuff. And so when people try to say, oh, just because nation as a word comes from, where we get natal, the root of it, like, or when we talk about a patriot, right, is someone who is an advocate of the patria, the fatherland. That's why we call it, that's why we call it the fatherland, right? Like in the East, they'll refer to it more as the motherland. But, we call America our fatherland because it's the land that our fathers both founded and, they were born in. They built it.
They created it.
Yeah, it defines them and therefore us. So,
yeah,
I just want to say that that's not a fallacy. It's not a fallacy to look up in the etymology of a word to find out where it came from and what people meant when they created the word. That's not a fallacy at all.
Yeah. There are several alleged fallacies that, as it turns out, are not fallacies.
Yeah, just good arguments that people don't.
My favorite one is the slippery slope fallacy, which the very existence of slippery slopes proves that it's not a fallacy. I mean, slippery slopes exist in real life. Yeah. So it may be fallacious to attribute a slippery slope to something incorrectly, but slippery slopes do exist. And, when people were opposing sodomy in the United States and they said, oh, well, this will lead to bestiality and polyamory and all of these other things. Well, what do you know? It did. So, the supposed slippery slope fallacy that turns out was absolutely justifiably correct. Yeah. But when it comes to defining nation, I just dropped it in my Brave browser, or actually this one was Google, and just looked up, define nation. What is a nation? And I actually liked this definition much better than Webster's definition. He says, a nation is a large historically developed community of people bound together by shared characteristics such as common ancestry, history, language, culture, or territory. And really, it's probably, at least three out of these five really is what any nation is. While it's often used interchangeably with country or state, a nation specifically refers to the cultural and social bonds of its people. So, like an empire might have laws and rules that govern the empire, those are not the same thing as the national bonds of the people towards each other. You can't make people love each other by rote. You can't write a law that says you will love your next door neighbor.
Yeah.
Hey, Pashtuns, you are going to love and enjoy the cultural enrichment of the Turkmens in your neighborhood or in the village to your north, right? You cannot enforce that by law. It's just not a thing. And so the bonds of these people with each other, very, the cultural and social bonds of the people, I really appreciate that definition. And I'm not sure exactly where they're pulling these from, but they've got Voice of America, Merriam-Webster, YouTube defining all of these things. But I really do like that definition.
I like that. I like what they're saying about nation state. I think that is a good way to say. This happens when a cultural nation's borders align perfectly with a sovereign state. There it is. That really says it all right there. A nation state is when the people align with their government, which was what we were trying to do in the war between the states. We were trying to say, hey, clearly the North and the South are different people culturally, racially to some extent. Now, obviously, they're all white, but they wanted their government to align with who they were as a people. An example of this for all the like woke crowd pastors that are gonna, that stuff doesn't matter. What do we call the Cherokees as an entity? We call them the Cherokee Nation, right? If you go up to the big casino people like to drive north to is Choctaw, right? That's the Choctaw Nation. You can see on a map, if you actually like zoom in on Google Maps on Oklahoma, it'll show you this part is the Choctaw Nation. This part is I don't know all the names of all the tribes up there, unfortunately, but there's all these different groups. They don't have, they're not different countries, right? They have some kind of legal or government entity that kind of interacts with ours and makes treaties that we probably don't follow.
Probably don't keep.
Yeah.
What else is new?
Yeah, but all that to say, like that, there is a such thing as that. Yeah, so I like that definition of nation state. I like that definition of country, the geographic territory itself. That's a lot better because a country doesn't describe a people. I like Google came through with some good terms on this one. A state, the actual political and legal structure that governs a specific geographic territory. That's perfect, right? Do you make that distinction between state and nation?
Absolutely. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
I do.
I would say the nation of Germany and the state of Germany are not necessarily the same thing.
Right.
Within Germany, you also have a subset, which is called Freistaat Bayern, the Free State of Bavaria. And they have a limited but distinct government authority in the Bavarian state. And it is expressly and explicitly Catholic, whereas the rest of Germany is, fairly liberal, fairly libertarian when it comes to religion. They're more or less a secular nation now. Yet Bavaria still self-consciously is extremely Catholic. Yeah, so I really I think Noah Webster's definition a little too liberal for my taste, but it does give you a snapshot into what he's looking at and what he's trying to define. Yeah.
Tell me if this is getting into something that you're going to be later getting into, but originally, like, let's go back to the Roman Empire going into the other parts of Europe, right? So into the, quote, barbarian parts of Europe, right? So the Germans, the Franks, all these people. However it was they defined it. What they would do back then, they would say, this is the people who are on this side of the Rhine and like south of this and all that kind of stuff. Are we transferring the baby now? Yeah. Sorry. I was on baby watch for a little bit. So for anyone who was wondering what was going on there. But yeah, it mattered like what side of the, oh yes, this is the baby.
Here you go.
Say hi.
Look at those bright blue eyes.
I know.
All right.
Good night, buddy. Anyways, they would define it by like, these are the people on this side of, I say the Rhine because historically that's always been like a very strong border. Like the people on the west of that river do not cross into the east part, and the people on the east don't go to the west part. And what you would have is, even if you were a traveler and you went to some other place, you would never then call yourself by that place that you went to. Who you were as a person is where you're from. That's that forever. That's what it is. So like when the Apostle Paul goes all over in Europe and Asia Minor, he's a Jew. He's not like, he'll talk about his Roman citizenship. He'll talk about what political entity he has citizenship with, and he uses
and the privileges that he receives
right.
because of it. Mm-hmm.
And he uses that, and I've talked with other veterans about this, that we'll use that for gain.
Mm-hmm.
You know, like sometimes that's a good way to shut someone up. You know, in the same way that Paul is will say things like, I'm a Hebrew of Hebrews or whatever. It's like, well, I'm an all-American American. Like, you can't touch my credentials. And then suddenly, I mean, you know, when you start talking about being a veteran, I don't want to, you know, depending on what circle you're in, some people just spit on you. But where was I going with that? Oh, you didn't just change, you know, the Ethiopian didn't just change his skin. The leopard didn't just change his spots. You were always identified as that thing. To the point where, I mean, you've got, what's a good example? You got the Vikings going into France and they found Normandy, right? Well, that's just the Normans, the Northmen. It's like, okay, this is your spot up there in Normandy. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Now, you know, then you end up getting into, what's the word when you create a nation?
An ethnogenesis.
Ethnogenesis, that's the one.
Mm-hmm.
So
yeah, because they start intermarrying with the French, and after several hundred years, they speak French. Now it's a different kind of French than the more inland French would have spoken at the time, but they started speaking Norman French, and that's why in 1066 with the Norman invasion, all these Viking descendants that come in, even though they're Viking descendants, they still speak French. And 1066 is a great example of this because you have Harold Godwinson, who is the King of England, and he goes up north to defend an invasion of Harold. What was his name? I don't remember. It was like Harold the Bloodthirsty, whatever that translated to in his language. But Viking invasion in the north, because the north of England was actually occupied by Norsemen. The city of New York is named for the old city of York in England, which at its founding was called Jorvik, which is not Anglo. It's not Saxon. That is a Scandinavian name because it was founded by Vikings. Dublin was founded by Vikings. I mean, the Vikings got around. They really, all the way down to Turkey. I mean, they were prolific, and they left traces of their genetic trail all through these areas as well. But
and runes, interestingly, in Turkey, they found some interesting runes on, like, some Viking was just bored and kind of was like, I'm just gonna scratch some runes into this castle here.
Yeah, isn't there in a cave? I think this is in northern Turkey. There's a cave where there are some runes scratched like 25 feet up on the wall.
Yeah, like really.
And some guys got up there and they translated the runes, and it was something like,
this is very high.
Yeah, literally.
That's all it says. This is very high.
Yeah. As the guy was memeing before memeing was a thing.
Yeah.
Yeah. But, all this to say, you had these ethnogeneses. You had these nations were made up of people. The Northmen in England were the Vikings, and they were a genetic people. The Anglo-Saxons were a genetic combination of Anglos and Saxons who came over and pushed the Celts into the corners of the British Isles. And the Britons, who were there even before the Anglo-Saxons, they were a Saxon or a Latinate people who were settled there by the Roman Empire. And then you have the Normans who come in and they settle the place with French. Well, today you call the English. You don't really parse, how much of you is Celtic, how much of you is, some people do, but really it's futile to do so. I mean, people who look into their genetics are like, oh yeah, I'm Scottish. They start looking at, okay, how Scottish are you? Well, I'm so-and-so much Celtic, so-and-so much English, so-and-so much Norman. I mean, they're very much a mixed group of people. And yet we all know what an Englishman is. There was an ethnogenesis hundreds of years ago that created what is today a homogenous nation.
Can I say it's interesting. I don't want to go too deep into the specifics of this, but you and I have talked a lot about. Have you ever done a DNA test?
I've not. I want to eventually.
Okay. Because I know we've talked about my DNA results in the past, and it's been interesting talking with you because we've talked about it for a number of years. And what's notable about that is that I just checked it again. Somebody was saying, "Oh, there was a meme on Twitter that was actually very funny to me because it said like, guys when they find 2% Scandinavian in their DNA test, and it's like a dude with a horn and like the fur and all that kind of stuff, like he's just like ready to be a Viking now because he found 2% Scandinavian." And I had posted my results, which something like it keeps going up, like the amount because now they have a category for Nordic, which not only has Scandinavian, but it also has like Danish and Finnish is in there for me. So they really like the numbers change because it used to be like a couple of versions ago, years ago, I would have a lot of broadly European in my results. So they didn't know exactly where, but they're like, well, obviously this is like white dude DNA.
Yeah.
So they, or it would say like broadly Scandinavian or like broadly Western European, broadly British. So we don't know if it's Irish Germanic or English. Yeah, and that's an interesting one too, because it used to say German or French, like broadly German or French. Like we don't know exactly where, but as each version has gone on, more and more people have done more DNA tests. And they've gotten more like very specific. I was showing you how specific they get with the German stuff to the point where they're saying, "Oh yeah, you have ancestry from the Rhineland-Pfalz," which I was saying like that's cool because that's where I was stationed in Germany. So I don't know. There was a castle there that I used to hang out at. It was like ruins of a castle. So I'm curious, like if I have any connection to that, that'd be dope. Anyways, where I was going with this, you were just talking about basically like Vikings from Normandy invading Vikings from York. And like, so you basically have, it reminded me of the meme where it's like the ICE agent who's Mexican saying like, we don't want your people here.
Yeah. Kind of thing, we don't want your kind here.
Yeah. So it's like, we have like our Mexicans fighting your Mexicans. Like,
yeah, very similar meme to like when we were invading, was it Colombia or, no. Earlier this year when we invaded
Venezuela.
Yeah. And it was like, they had a picture of the US helicopters coming in over the hills. And on the American helicopters, it said, hey, Jesus, Jesus, Jose, Hernandez, good guys. And then on the hills, it said, Jesus, Jose, Hernandez, bad guys.
Yeah. Yeah. Generic Hispanic name. And yeah.
It's like our Mexicans are going in there to fight their Mexicans.
Right. So where I'm going with this is that in England, the English have had that ethnogenesis happen. In America, we have not had that yet. Now you can say we're beginning that process. You could say that, but we haven't gotten there yet. And you see these in 2026, very distinct enclaves of, you could say Hispanics, but for me, it was particularly Mexicans because growing up, when I grew up in Stanislaus County in California, I use that example because it was less than 50% white my entire life living there. And it's obviously only gotten worse. And then, here in Texas, I want to say has Texas reached less than 50% white yet? Or is it less than 50% under 18?
I believe the under 18 is correct.
Yeah, I don't know if it's gone. I don't know if the old people no longer producing still keep those numbers.
Let's see. Texas is a young, rapidly growing, yada, yada. Non-Hispanic white, approximately 40%. Hispanic, approximately 40%, along with 12% black, 5% Asian. And that
So,
Asian is going to
yes.
be split between, Indians and Chinese and Japanese. It's
So if my numbers are right, that is less than 50% white.
right.
Okay,
40%.
so so in no point in my life have I lived in a majority white area, I guess. I don't know exactly what it is for like DFW or whatever, but all that to say, like there are enclaves where they speak the foreign language, they intermarry foreign, they keep all their customs. If you go into their house, which I do for work, and I'm not like saying I don't do service for non-white people, right? Like I'm cool with them. I act cool. It's kind of hard to be cool with them when they don't speak my language, and I'm kind of like, me go over there, oh, you know what I mean? Like what are you gonna say? Um, so or they'll just look at you like lived in America for 20 years and they just look at you, oh yeah. Um,
Yeah, because they're living in
and
an enclave, they didn't ever have to assimilate. They didn't ever pick
right,
up the language or the
right.
customs.
And they're
Yeah.
not going to intermarry. That's the other
hmm
part of ethnogenesis. You don't just have like little what would you even call it in Vikings go to England and they have little little Scandinavia within, you know what I mean? Like it'd be like a town that's like only
Yeah.
like little China or little
The word
Chinatown kind of
historically
thing.
that used to be used for that, which this is a word that has kind of changed its definition a little bit and is kind of frowned upon now. But what was it called when a ghetto? When
Oh
we
yeah,
say ghetto in America today, people tend to think of the African American ghetto with all of its negative connotations because it's full of African Americans, which just kind of their bad luck follows them around. Poor people have poor ways, if you get what I'm saying. But ghetto as a word, all it meant was, people of a
ethnic
particular
enclave.
ethnic enclave coming together and forming a community that is distinct from the nation in which they live. The Warsaw Ghetto was a Jewish community in Warsaw. And that is just because they were not intermarrying. They did not have the same religion as the people around them. They didn't eat the same food. They didn't speak the same language. Here in the middle of Poland, you had people who spoke a Germanic language, a a Jewish influenced Germanic language, and the Poles were not very happy about that. And even though it was a Germanic language, the Germans weren't very happy about it either. The history of ghettos is one of most people being very unsatisfied with the lack of assimilation of different people groups.
So where I'm going with this is because of assimilation and ethnogenesis, someone like me who is extremely Scandinavian, like 3/4 that, and then like a bunch of related groups. I don't remember the exact percentages on some, and then it was like a 10% Germanic type thing, Saxon ish, and then like another 10% British and Irish type thing. All that to say, like, I am now, because of that interrelatedness, you've got, the people from what you could say my ancestors' country of origin, the majority of them, I am now closely related to people in France and Germany and the British Isles and all these places because we created this ethnogenesis. That's why if you ever seen people with the circle, like the small circle of where white people come from, have you ever seen that? Like where it's like the difference between potato Europe and tomato Europe.
Mm-hmm.
If you've ever seen that map, so you could say, like, in that coastal region, you have a very interconnected people. You might even just call them white people, right? And you obviously have a lot more of that in America because I mean, how many people, unless you've done a DNA test, how many people in America, white people, will sit there and tell you, "Oh yeah, I'm half Dutch and half Polish or something." You know what I mean? Like that. Maybe in the 1800s that used to be a thing. Well, like the guy in Blazing Saddles, where he's asking me, "Oh yeah, my mommy was Polish, my daddy was whatever." Like nobody knows that anymore unless very recent immigrants. But all that to say, like there's that mixture has created this ethnogenesis, which has not happened in America.
Or
And
it's certainly not a completed process yet.
Yeah. And because we haven't, because we keep bringing in new foreigners, it's never going to happen. That's something Stephen Wolf has talked about, where he's like, guys, ethnogenesis does not happen if you just constantly bring waves and waves of new immigrants, right? Like Indian immigrants is the rage right now, right? Like that's the thing. We did not historically have a bunch of Indians coming into America.
As a matter of fact, our founding fathers explicitly forbade the importation of Hindus.
Right.
And for them, it was not a religious preference. It was a racial distinction. They said, no people from the Indus River Valley civilizations. We don't want them here.
Yeah.
Explicitly in black and white. Yeah, that was the law.
Yeah.
All right. Well, we've been going for almost an hour. Let's hop into comments here. We've got Jeff Hapley says, howdy. Howdy, Jeff. Good to see you, man.
Howdy.
And Chuck for Tunnel says, good evening. Good evening, sir. Good to see you. Henrietta Stewart says, good evening. Good evening. Good to see you, man. Serenity Now 22 says, good evening from Canada. Looking forward to this conversation. Canada is an interesting ethnogenesis, because they really do, where you were talking about America hasn't had that finalized ethnogenesis. Canada really has. And they've kept a distinct ethnic barrier between the French Canadians and the Anglo Canadians, the English Canadians. Yeah. And unlike the US, which has had waves of German and Czech and Scandinavian, all kinds of different continental Europeans coming in, Canada didn't really ever have that. They were just English. And genetically, they're pretty much just that, just English with a little bit of French, where the French and the English have rubbed off on each other.
Also, Canada, man, like once you get into hockey, no matter what your team is, you will find a love for Canada because it's just like great players that come from there, right? Like they invented the sport. It's their thing. It's their version of, it's their national pastime, right? And they don't have an alternative to that like we do in America. Like we say that baseball is the national pastime. It'll always be called that, but like everyone knows football is probably a bigger hubbub, right?
Today, these days.
And it's not, it's nowhere near as international as Major League Baseball is. But hockey is their one thing, which is why it was so hilarious when we beat them at the Olympics, because that's all they've got is hockey. So
not only did we beat them at hockey, we beat them at curling, which isn't even a real sport.
Yeah.
Which, that said, I mean, I watched the curling games and I was like, you know what, I could get into this. I could enjoy playing a game of this on the ice, but I don't know how it ever became an international sport. It looks much more like something that,
but all that
guys would do on the weekends just to
all that to time. Say thank you Canada, for Joe Thornton and for Macklin Celebrini. Thank you so much. Macklin Celebrini is GOAT in the making. Just watch. It's happening.
Don't believe me, just watch. Based American Crusaders, soccer is Europe versus South America. And they have tried so hard to bring Africa into the fold and make soccer the sport where Africa can finally win, and it's just not happening. Africa has to colonize France, and France still ends up losing. So it's just it is Brazil and Argentina versus all of the European nations, but especially Spain, Portugal, England, and France. Based American Crusader says, why isn't Sean eating food live on stream?
Oh, dude, I've eaten so much crud today, man. Like
Yeah,
I said, it's my daughter's birthday, so like we had a pizza. Like I shouldn't have even eaten any of that, but it was. I mean, I love pizza. I will eat pizza, but I was already so full from eating other things. Because my kids, we keep making this food for the kids, and they don't want to eat it. And it's like, well, okay, well, I'm not gonna not eat this now,
yeah.
right? So I'm like,
They're,
I've just been eating crud all day.
Yeah, they're getting up at night and making grilled cheeses and storing them away.
Yeah.
Base American Crusader says racism is inevitable. Well, if you're using that word to mean the study of race, that's going to always be with us. Yeah. And there's always going to be distinctions between the races ever since the Tower of Babel. That is going to be a thing. And the more you try to homogenize, the more it's just going to break down into ethnic enclaves. It really isn't going to happen. God created the world to exist in a certain way, and it does. And glad to see the little child. Yellow Moth says, sodomy didn't lead to bestiality, immigration did. No, there is a very direct line of, the sexual degeneracy coming in. It's not that foreigners came in with the sexual deviancy. This is, there were certainly foreigners at play, specific foreigners who promoted sodomy, and they are very proud of that fact. But no, this is, we have our own faults too. It's not just foreigners bringing stuff in. What we allow is what becomes normal, is what eventually becomes required. Now kids have to read about it in school because that is who we are as a country at the moment. Yellow Moth says, she's beautiful. She looks just like you. Therefore, Sean is beautiful. Yeah. But that's his son, but yes.
Yeah. Or he's talking about my wife. I don't know.
Check for Tunnel says Little Reykjavik. Not sure what the reference here is.
Well, we were talking about ghettos, and I was talking about like little Scandinavia. There's even saying it'd be like little Reykjavik.
Yeah, the Midwest is very interesting because even though it's part of America and has been for hundreds of years at this point, or at least 100 years, you have places like Minnesota, which are completely Scandinavian. Right, their gridiron football team, the Minnesota Vikings. They didn't just decide that they like Vikings, and so they just picked Vikings out of a hat. That's their heritage. That's who they are. And then you've got places like Iowa, which are extremely Dutch. You've got Pennsylvania, which has a lot of Germans who, settled there because of religious persecution in the continent. You have these places that have these ethnic enclaves here in the United States that are becoming, for instance, I noticed this. This is something very interesting too. And Sean, you've traveled internationally. I'm sure you've seen this as well. Have you ever been in an airport or in a foreign place and then you find a random American? Yes. And it's like all of a sudden y'all are buddies.
Oh, right?
Yeah. If you're in India and a guy is walking past and he's from New York City and you're from Texas, back home, y'all probably wouldn't care, right? Yeah. It's like, yeah, okay, he's from New York. He's a foreigner. He's not one of us. Get it. Don't New York my Texas. Get out of here. What are you even doing here? Get lost.
Right.
But once you're in a foreign country like India, and it's like everybody around you is a Hindu or a Buddhist, or they're all brown, they're all a foot shorter than you, and you see this one white guy off in the distance walking by, and you're like, "Hey, you're my people." All of a sudden, look, you, me. We're buddies now. And you hang out and it's like, we're the best of friends. We're Americans. And that is a real thing that happens with everybody.
Dude, I used to feel that at the blood plasma donation place when I used to do that. Like I was one of those guys that was like a regular. I don't are you familiar with how that
Never
works?
done it.
Because
never done
okay,
it.
because it's not like donating whole blood. Because you can only do that every 3 months or something like that. Like you can give a pint at a time, but then all that has to recharge. But with plasma, you can donate that like twice a week or something like that. Like, and some people do. So they'll do it like 8 times a month and you get bonuses for that and all. Anyways, all that to say, when you see another white dude at the blood plasma place, it's like, hey, we're like, you know what I mean? Like, because it's a very dark thing to do. I was poor at the time, so.
Yeah, well, I mean, it's a very poor people thing, and in the U.S., the poor people tend to be the ethnic minorities.
Right.
Yeah, man, plasma, I get weirded out by that. I would much rather give whole blood.
You got to
than
sit
plasma.
there,
and here's
sit
why.
there for a bit, dude.
Now, my dad's a doctor, so this is coming from a guy who should know. But what he told me is, when you give blood, they just take your blood. When you give plasma, they take your blood and they spin the plasma out, and then they give you back blood.
Correct.
And the blood they're giving you back, at least according to him, and this is maybe outdated, but the blood they're giving you back isn't necessarily yours.
No, that doesn't make sense, dude. You'd have so many clots if something like that happened. Like, especially me being O negative. Like, because that's why you can't take.
Yeah, it would have to be yours. Dude, you're O negative?
Oh, yeah.
I'm O negative.
Oh.
Hey!
Hey! I heard a thing one time was saying because of the Black Plague that most Europeans have type O blood, whether positive or negative. And it was because something about type O fought off the plague better. That might just be someone blowing smoke, but
yeah, I don't know.
I heard that, and it makes sense.
Yeah, I think my wife is A positive or something like that, and I'm O negative, and so our children kind of run the gamut because of that. They're all over the place. Yeah. It's a weird combination, but yeah, fun stuff. Interesting. I believe it's not an issue anymore, but when I first came to the States, they would not accept my blood because I lived in Europe during the mad cow disease outbreak.
Yep. No, they still ask you.
Oh yeah,
they still ask you. Oh yeah.
Did you live in
the UK in during the 90s or something, whatever years it was?
Yeah, and so they actually will not take my blood. I'm O negative. I'm the guy that they would want to have his blood because it can. I'm the universal donor, but they don't want my blood because I was in the wrong place at the wrong time. So I cannot donate.
Something that is also important about that is when you donate plasma or whole blood, they will ask you what your race is. And they define race very clearly in there. And for white, it is the original peoples of Europe, the Middle East, and North Africa. That is how they define white. Because scientifically, historically, anything where you can put an objective stamp and say, this is what it means to be a white person, those are the areas where our people lived and, conquered at points or that's where we live. We're the original inhabitants of that region. North Africa is originally white people, according to the scientists, where it actually matters what race you are. Those are the people that define it as that. The original inhabitants of Europe, the Middle East, and North Africa.
Yeah, and it actually makes a difference because who you are able to give blood to is more than just your blood type, but it's also there has to be a similar, homogenous, or at least related racial background. I mean, it's not as strict as things like bone marrow, right? And people have pointed out, if you have a mixed race child and the parent is not able to donate a kidney or bone marrow in cases of emergency because they are not related to their child. If an Englishman marries an African, and when I say African, I mean someone who is originally from Africa, not like a Dutch South African, his child is less related to him than a random Englishman. A random Englishman from a different part of England whom he has never met is more related to him than his own child because of the genetic disparity. And it affects who you can donate body parts to. So, yeah, these things do
with
exist
blood,
and they do matter.
Even with blood, which is very universal. Like, if there's any other O negative person, I don't think there are African people who have type O. I could be wrong. If they did exist, I could take their blood. And here's where that comes from: is you have the standard blood types are going to be type A and type B, right? It's like a type 1, type 2. They can't mix. If you mix, your body will recognize that blood as a foreign body and it will clot because it's trying to get rid of that foreign body. So you cannot do that. So if you have type A, you can't receive type B. If you have type B, you can't receive type A. There is a such thing as type AB, which is where through whatever genetic intermixing or whatever, you now have both types as one.
Combined.
So you can receive type B or type A by themselves or type AB because you are able to recognize all of those different types in your own body. It's not something foreign. That's right. Check for Thomas saying AB positive. I'll get into the rhesus factor after this. Type O is a third thing that does not recognize A or B. But
A and B both recognize O.
So for whatever reason, yeah, it's almost like it's not a blood type. Like it's just like a neutral blood type. So there's that. There's those 3 or 4, however you count that. So if you're type O, you can only receive type O because type A, type B, or type AB will be a foreign thing to you. Yeah. And then there's the rhesus factor.
O positive can receive O positive and O negative. O negative can only receive O negative.
Right.
So
and
they're
the positive negative,
but they're also the most restrictive about what they can receive.
Yeah. So the positive negative is the rhesus factor, which is a separate way of distinguishing it. But basically, if you are positive for the rhesus factor, you can receive blood that is positive or negative. If you are negative, then you cannot receive positive of the rhesus factor. Again, it'll count as a foreign body. So with all that said, if you have a mother who is type A and a father who is type B, and you have a kid and the kid comes out, am I doing this right? It's not necessarily going to come out AB. Right? That's not necessarily.
It's kind of a roll of the dice.
Yeah. But in that case, the child, if it was like AB, could receive from both parents. But if you had, you're an A, this one's a B, you have the kid, and then the kid comes out like type B, well, that type B can't receive anything from the type A parent, but can from the type B parent. So it's like a whole, there's a lot going on there. So even something as universal as blood, like for instance, when I used to donate whole blood fairly regularly, they would always say, dude, you're a perfect donor because you're O negative, you're a universal donor, no one's going to reject your blood. And I had some other factor. There's some other thing in my blood. And they were like, can we give your blood to babies? Like, I don't know why they ask you that. Like, if it's good, if it tests right, you'd think they would do it. So I would just tell them yes, because then I know that they're saving it for babies and not like prisoners or something like that. But there's all these different factors, I guess is where I'm trying to go with that. So yes, the AB positive is the universal recipient. These are the people who contribute nothing to society and take everything from society.
Right. Yeah. Czech Fratellum says, we ran into an American flight crew in Budapest who flew for the UAE airline. The two teams merged it into one. Yeah.
Huh.
Yeah, I mean, you might find them on the opposite side of the world, but there's immediate recognition. Nobody had to walk up and be like, oh, by the way, you're from the same nation, right? You just knew, even though they're flying for a private airline, you're in the army or whatever it is that you're doing in Budapest. They know, you instinctively know when you see somebody else from your nation, you're like, yeah, there's a common understanding between us. There's something that we share here. And Yellow Moss says, hey, you guys can give me blood. A
Yep,
positive, I'm the smartest kind.
I can give blood to anybody.
That's right. That's right. You're not special. You're
Right.
not special. Says I
So
test positive
clearly-
for the Reese's factor whenever I see peanut butter cups.
So in Lutheran theology, we would have to believe that Jesus has O negative blood, but I guess Calvinists can have like some highly restrictive thing like B positive or something like that, and give blood to a very small group of humans.
Only the elect.
Right. Yeah.
The elect by blood type.
Yeah.
All right. Well, let's get back into, so we've kind of talked about some definitions of nation and state and people and country, and we looked at the etymology, which is worth looking at again. So I want to pull this up before we continue our discussion. But the etymology, comes from nation, from French nation, from Latin nationem, birth, origin, breed, stock, kind, species, race of people, tribe, literally that which has been born, from natos, past participle of nasi, to be born, from the primitive root gene, give birth, begat. So here's people have been talking on Twitter about nation. What is a nation? This is a fellow who, I don't know anything about him, but I just saw this and I thought this is a very interesting take on it. He says a nation is a large, self-aware community of people who share common cultural, historical, linguistic, and ethnic backgrounds. The word nation explicitly states a group of people of the same race. Black people are not English. That's his big takeaway is Africans are not English. And he's specifically saying that because he is, I believe, an Englishman, defending the ethnic rights of the English people to belong to England. And right now, England is being taken over by foreigners who are showing up and saying, "Oh, well, I'm just as English as you. I'm every bit as much of an Englishman as you are." Here is a different definition, and he kind of breaks it down between nation, country, and state, which is, as we saw earlier in the Google definition that they pulled up. He says a nation. This is J. Caleb Jones. Don't know him, but he says a nation is a group of people united by common ancestry. But in modern times, it has loosely come to also mean the country the nation lives in and the state that governs it. Then he goes on, a country is a piece of land, but in modern times, it has loosely come to also mean the nation or nations that live in it and the state that governs it. A state is a government, but in modern times, it has loosely come to also mean the nation or nations governed by the state and the country or countries over which the state governs. People who think a nation is interchangeable with country or state are being inexact. William Wolfe is just being precise, and he's not wrong. And the reason he said that is because there was an argument between Wolfe and Barry, which we'll get into shortly. But before we did, I wanted to just post this real quick. This is a quote from President Theodore Roosevelt. The Americans are children and grandchildren of the men who came here from England, Ireland, Germany, France, Scandinavia, and the rest of Europe. These have become Americans, a new race with a new ethnic type, and they are no more Englishmen or Germans or Scandinavians than the descendants of the Norman invaders of England are Frenchmen. The frontier conditions made a new race. The stern struggle with the wilderness and with wild men welded together the descendants of many European stocks into one people, the American. Out of the crucible of the wilderness came a new ethnic type, hardy, self-reliant, democratic in instinct, and with a continent for its inheritance. And that, to me, is just a beautiful definition of what is going on here, where that is ethnogenesis. And Roosevelt is saying right there what a nation is. We are a nation because we carved ourselves out of the clay. You know, we came here, there was nothing here but trouble and absolutely dire conditions, awful weather, but a free continent to populate. And we did. And out of that came the American ethnogenesis. And I would say it is still in process, but it is definitely underway. It is not something entirely new that nobody has ever heard of before. But this spat, go ahead.
Oh, I want to talk on this quote actually specifically because I have been. Is ruminating, is that the right word for that?
Mm-hmm.
That's not a negative connotation to it.
No,
It
no.
sounds negative.
To ruminate is to
Okay.
think on something, like a cow chews on grass.
Okay.
That's where it comes from, rumination.
Oh, there you go. I have been chewing on this. This quote in particular, I don't know if it was because you posted it or because someone else did, and I don't know, but I've been thinking about it a lot this past week, actually. And there's something about what the land did to us as a people that really made us different. And the reason I was noting that part of what he's talking about is the World Cup. When all these Europeans came over, we are genetically more or less the same, right? Depending on, what country people are coming from. But they did not go through, the land did not chew them up and spit them out the way that it did to us and our ancestors. And you can see that in the way, like, they come to America and they're just fascinated. Like, they go to, they go to Buc-ee's and get this like smoked meat type thing. Like, the idea of barbecue is so, like, that's so incredibly rugged. I know we have machines, like these crazy machines for that now, but you literally just like putting meat over a campfire, and like, it's like some straight caveman stuff. But that's how, that's what we had. We had to, the reason that we have turkey for Thanksgiving is because our ancestors would go and hunt a wild turkey. They didn't just keep turkeys. They would hunt a wild turkey, and they would be big enough to actually feed a whole family because they're gigantic birds. Deer, people would just go hunt a deer. The land itself, having to farm the way that we farmed, having to hunt the way that we hunted, the ruggedness of the terrain, just the vastness of the land, right? Like, when you think about the California gold rush, like, there must have been some like nagging "I told you so" type wives in those days, because you're literally just like packing up the wagon and doing the Oregon Trail thing, right? Like, that's insane to me. That was like my grandma said that when I packed up a bunch of stuff in California in a like a fifth wheel and took it out with my truck to Texas with nothing other than what was in our in the U-Haul. She's like, wow, it's like old Western times traveling like that. But there's some that have it. And I really thought about that when I saw these Europeans go into like Big Five or whatever sporting goods store they went to. And they were just like playing with the guns, right? Obviously they weren't loaded, and they had like the little trigger lock thing on it and all that. But they were just like, oh, whoa, I can hold a gun here. This is crazy. But for us, for our ancestors, you owned a gun because you were either in the military, which is very American, just like being a random military guy, or having a military era in your life is a very American thing. Well, time to go fight the war and then come back and live a totally normal life. Or you were just hunting for your food. Like that's why we like our guns, because they are useful to us. Apparently in Europe, they don't consider them useful because they didn't have to go through what the land did to them. All that to say, kind of put the cherry on top of that. The Indians coming now, the Hispanics coming now, all these people coming now to America they don't go through that because they just show up and there's a country here. It's like who's the guy? Jesse Lee Peterson, is that who I'm thinking of? The black dude that is just says the most crazy stuff. He was saying he was pointing out to someone because they were like, "Oh, this is a nation of immigrants." He's like, "No, there had to have been a nation already there for immigrants to show up. Like somebody showed up and built the nation. Like there was a people that created it. It wasn't just every single person who showed up. It wasn't like the Native Americans already had cities, right? The Native Americans would they would put up teepees and they would poop in them. And then when it got bad enough, they would just move to the next spot. That's the kind of civilization that they had there, where they'd sit there sharpening stones, or I found some obsidian, I can hit it with a rock and it'll make it sharp, and now I can chuck a spear at a buffalo. That's the kind of civilization that was here. So all these new Americans, these new immigrants coming in, they will never go through that process. And they don't have ancestors handing that process down to them through
a cultural memory.
Right. Mm-hmm. So we're not the same. You don't just show up and suddenly, you're waving an American flag and oh, we're like the same guy. It's just, it doesn't happen. So yeah, that is a very that's just a great quote. And the fact that it came from what a lot of modern liberals will try to say is a historically liberal president really just puts the icing on the cake for it.
Yeah. So anyway, this blow up between Joel Berry and William Wolfe, this is actually the origin of it right here. So Joel Berry posts on Twitter, he says, "Nations are not families. Nations should not be treated like families. Nations should not replace families. Nations should protect and promote actual families." And William Wolfe just says, "You sure about that?" He posts a definition of nation. 1300 nation, a race of people, large group of people with common ancestry and language. And it gives the etymology. And then down here, to be born, Old Latin nasi, from primitive root, gene, give birth, beget, with derivatives referring to procreation and familial and tribal groups. Familial and tribal groups. And he just posts that. And boy, oh boy, did he get under Joel Berry's, did he turn into a burr under his saddle? Because he says, "This is a nation according to William Wolfe." And he posts this very famous picture of these tribesmen from this island in the Indian Ocean. And Joel, I know you might not be the brightest crayon in the box, the sharpest pencil, the sharpest tack, whatever proverbial you want to use there. But you do know that these people are called the island nation. It's a nation. Wait,
go up,
just not.
Go up for a second.
Which one?
Go, one more. Go on one more. Joel, you have no. Oh, because is that just like a crazy ratio? 1.8 thousand. You have no idea what you're talking about, and everyone.
Yeah, that's a
and
pretty
everyone
crazy
would be
ratio.
Better served if you stuck to writing jokes. Yeah, you're a third world dude. Joel Berry is saying things that make no sense. What was he trying to say? What was he trying to say with, "Oh, according to him, this is a nation"? I saw that and I was like, yeah, I'm sure according to everybody, that's a nation. Does he not believe that? I didn't understand what Joel Berry was saying that. And
yes,
especially when he says,
so the people here in this picture are from North Sentinel Island.
Yeah.
They are the Sentinelese people. And they are called the nation of the Sentinelese people. That is literally what they are referred to as. They are called a nation. by themselves and by the Indian government. The Indian government recognizes them as a nation under their protectorate. And people are not allowed to go to that island. It's very restrictive. And the reason is because they have an island culture there that has been extremely isolated. And the major worry is that these people will catch some foreign disease that they've not been exposed to and potentially be eradicated. But Joel Berry is saying this is a nation according to William Wolfe. Joel, this is a nation according to themselves, according to the government that has protectorate over their island nation, which is what it's called. And they're internationally recognized as a distinct nation. Yes, they are a protectorate of the nation of India. That is correct. But they are also an island nation. Definitively. So this is one of the worst self-owns that Joel has ever done, trying to insinuate that these people who are a nation are in fact not a nation. And also, this is extremely racist, Joel, for you to assume just because they're primitive savages that they're not a nation. I mean, that's my guy. Kind of racist. Kind of racist. But this goes back to, his original post, my response to it. He says, nations are not families. Nations should not be treated like families. Nations should not replace families. Nations should protect and promote actual families. And I just responded, natal is not familial. Natal should not be treated like familial. Natal should not replace familial. The reason it sounds stupid is because it is. Without natalism, you can't have familialism. That's the origin of family. Every single person in a family was born into that family. That's how that happened. And for you to just deny that nation has anything to do with the land of your nativity is ludicrous. It's stupid on its face. And William Wolfe has been catching flack from all kinds of super intelligent people like this idiot who says, apparently to be pagan like William Wolfe, you must also be retarded. Citation needed. Words develop. Nation was once synonymous with tribe. It developed a new, more civilized meaning that is often contrasted with tribe. For pagans, however, civilization was a mistake. Yes, because I'm sure William Wolfe is against civilization. That's definitely the takeaway here, is that William Wolfe is against civilization. He's trying to keep third worlders out of his first world nation because he's against civilization. That makes so much sense. Thank you, Norman, for your incredibly intelligent input here. And of course, no likes, no comments, because this guy is getting all the attention he deserves, which is none. So, Norman, shut up, retard.
But that's more of what I'm saying with the words develop. Yeah, I understand what you mean by that, but to say it was once synonymous with tribe, but then a more civilized meaning contrasted with tribe. Well, no, like that.
Yeah, words develop does not mean words begin to mean the opposite of what they meant.
Right.
It is not its own antonym.
I don't understand this calling us pagans for believing. And here's my real beef. When I was in college, there was a class that we did on missions or evangelism or something. It was like world missions or something, just to know, I guess, like to be part of the theology degree, just to know what people are doing internationally. Right. And the professor was this guy who's just like really respected in the missions circles or whatever. But he talked about one time I don't know if I'm pronouncing the city right, but it's the Lausanne conference, Lausanne, Switzerland. Is that how it's Lausanne, maybe? But look that up, the Lausanne conference of 1974. And it brought a bunch of people together, including like Billy Graham, John Stott, who I brought up on the show before as being the rector of All Souls. And in the conference, they came up with this is where the language, you should know about this conference if you are into the kind of discussions that we're having tonight. Because out of that conference and subsequent conferences that were intended to follow that original one, that's where you get the idea of people groups, right? Because they came together to ask about the state of world evangelism. And they came to the initial conclusion that, well, we've reached the whole world because we've reached every country, right? I think they used the verbiage of nation, but they really meant country, right? We've reached how many countries are there in the world? Like, very small number, right? Isn't it like 70-ish, maybe?
It's
not much.
It's around 100.
Oh, I thought it was.
But 195 recognized countries.
Oh, I was way
193 member states of the United Nations and 2 permanent non-member observer states, the Holy See and the state of Palestine.
I was way off on that.
But so that number is not accurate because it assumes incorrectly that Kosovo is a country, and everybody knows that Kosovo is Serbia.
Oh, UN.
Yeah. And there are also contested places like in West Africa, and I don't remember the name of these different places, but there's a contested area that says it's independent, and then the country that kind of occupies the coastal area says, no, you're not. But, there's not enough people there to actually fight a war of independence because it's literally the edge of the Sahara Desert. So yeah, there's situations like that.
The initial idea coming in is they're saying like, well, what now?
Yeah.
Because
we're supposed, the Bible talks about reaching every nation. Right. But what does it mean by that? And so they invent, like you said, the word people group. People group was not a word before the Lausanne Conference.
Right.
Because everybody just used the word nation to mean people group.
Right. So I don't want you to hear me wrong, people. Like, I don't believe that we've reached every tribe, tongue, nation, and people, right? So basically where I'm going with this is that in that conference they said, well, we haven't reached every people group because we haven't reached people from every language, from every tongue, right? So yeah, we've reached everyone from, let's use Afghanistan, right?
Yeah, there are missionaries in Afghanistan,
right? And
are there missionaries to every single people group in Afghanistan? And the answer to that is no.
Right. What you have to understand at that point is you have the country, the political entity of Afghanistan. On paper, it's one people, but what you actually have is different ethnicities or nations of people. You have different languages being spoken. So if you have within the same ethnicity 2 different languages being spoken, but you've only reached one of the people of that language, then you haven't reached this other group, and they're kind of an isolated group where they have no Christian representation at all. No one's reaching into there. So it's interesting that someone like Joel Berry, who, he's this liberal international, we're all one race, the human race kind of guy. He's a globalist. That would be the wording for that. I would be curious to see what he thinks of that, of looking at this conference and the definitions that came out of it. Because what it really does make, it's basically to say that there are many multiples of nations more than there are of countries, because you can't just use national boundaries. You can't just use boundaries of a country to say everyone within this is one people group. And like I was alluding to in the beginning, a lot of our Southern nationalist friends who I consider myself an ally of, would say, well, the South is its own nation, right? The Lausanne Conference, by their definitions, would have to agree with that. They wouldn't just say, oh, we've reached people in America, therefore we've reached all of America. Well, you couldn't say that. I mean, like I was saying, some, not all, of my Scandinavian ancestry comes from Minnesota, because Minnesota historically, like you were saying with the Minnesota Vikings, they named it the Vikings because at one point in time, literally everyone in Minnesota was from Norway or Sweden or a similar Nordic country. It's just insane to look at the history there. So, Pennsylvania is famously, at least parts of it, famously very German. That's what, when we refer to Pennsylvania Dutch country, we're actually referring to Deutsch, not actual Dutch, because it's very German influence. What's another good one? That might be it that I'm thinking of. As far as like large contingencies within America that have always been recognized, that might be it, really, for the most part. Okay, so there's a reason that dairy comes from, at least historically, primarily from one part of the country. I know California's taken over. Back when I was a kid, I remember that was a big deal. But you got places like Wisconsin that are just huge dairy areas, because those are the people who could handle dairy at the time.
Lactose.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, because racially, that's what they did. They could drink milk. The Romans looked at people like my Nordic ancestors. They're like, there are these crazy people way up north that drink milk raw. They don't have to turn it into cheese. They don't have to do anything with it. They just drink it. These people are insane. So not, historically, those are the people that, they come to America and then they go and make a bunch of dairy.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, they were cattle farmers back there,
yeah.
And they're cattle farmers here.
Yeah.
Yeah. But this also, if you're trying to see into the mind of Joel Berry, these two tweets of his, I think, are very informative. You've got, let me see if I can blow this up so you can see it. But Joel Berry says, Western civilization was invented by the Greeks and Jews while Europeans were still naked savages dancing around campfires. First off, historically, that is not correct. White Europeans were living inside of, wood sawn buildings, and they had clothing. Famously, pants, trousers were invented by Germans, Germanics. Joel, what you wear every day was invented by whites while Greeks and Jews were running around in dresses. All right? Greeks and Jews were running around like women in dresses while Europeans were wearing pants. And this guy in the comments, he says, what's your favorite thing about white?
That's a great question, by the way.
Yeah.
That really gets to the heart of it.
That's a nonsense question. It's like asking what's my favorite thing about people with green eyes. Race is meaningless. Well, hold on a second, Joel. Is race meaningless, or did Greeks and Jews invent civilization while white Europeans were naked savages dancing around campfires? You can't have it both ways here, you liar.
Yeah. What's your favorite thing about Europeans, Joel? Instead of saying whites, what's your favorite thing about Europeans? What's your favorite thing about white Europeans, which you just used while white Europeans were still naked savages? What's your favorite thing about white Europeans?
Race
Obviously, they exist. Yeah. You know what that means.
No, it doesn't exist. It doesn't exist. It's, it's completely arbitrary. It's completely made up. Also, they suck.
Yeah.
It's not happening, and it's a good thing it's happening. And then this one here, since I'm already pissing off Groypers this morning, here's my other take. Interracial marriage should be mandatory for the next 100 years or until we're all the same shade of brown. Okay, well, these terms are acceptable. Let's deport all the foreigners, and then let's have 100 years of intermarriage until we have an ethnogenesis. But that would be racist. But doing it before we depart all the foreigners, it's not racist to do it if we can include brown people. But if we exclude the brown people, all of a sudden it's racist. Love that double standard. Yeah. Love that double standard.
I think that all Jews should have to intermarry with sub-Saharan Africans until they are roughly 90 IQ all the way around. That's probably around where it was.
Jews are a high IQ people. Africans, unfortunately, through no fault of their own, seemingly, low IQ people. They should have some, they should get some help. And, they're right there. They need a homeland. Everybody in Arabia, in the Middle East, they all hate them. Why don't we just send them to Africa and force them to marry the Africans? It's good all around, guys. It'll solve all kinds of problems. Wouldn't that be great?
I want to address one more thing
about tongue in cheek, of course. That would not be great.
Yeah. What he was saying about white Europeans being naked savages. Okay, I understand that paganism has many naked savage type attributes to it. I'm not saying I'm not undermining that in any way. I have been, ironically enough, when you were talking about like wanting to touch the subject tonight, I had been all week on a huge like Scandinavian history kick. Like I've just been listening to all these audiobooks and stuff. And something that really struck me is sometimes people will look at, I'll just say Viking to kind of, obviously Viking is actually a verb. It is something you do, like you go Viking. It's not like a people, but I'll just use that because that's colloquially, that's how we understand that period. They'll look at that and they'll look at the type of home construction that they have, right? And they'll try to compare it to mud huts in Africa. In Africa, you don't have to really do anything to survive. The land is so hospitable that you can just live in a mud hut and make it. You're going to be fine, right? As long as you got some water, you're good. In Scandinavia, it takes some serious engineering to be able to withstand the cold. Yes, you have to plan ahead with the amount of wood that you're going to burn to even survive, right? There's not just, I'm just going to sleep out in the cold today like you can in Africa, or I'm just sleep under the stars and live fine and nothing happens to you. The reason that they had thatched roofs is because that is a great way to insulate. All right. That's not the same. Mm-hmm. Yes. That is not the same as Africans just throwing straw on top of some mud, right? That they have to replace the mud all the time. Like they have was it Ethiopia where they have like the sacred house thing that they have where it's literally a mud hut that they have to constantly add mud to keep it up. So there's it's not the same, it's not comparable, right? And then you look into the engineering of Viking ships is insane. Have you like read something like what's crazy about them? And I know that if you don't know the usual boundaries of ships, when they landed in England, the people were very confused by the idea that the Vikings were going up the rivers, because they're like, what do you mean they're going up the river when they took a boat that crossed the ocean? How are they now taking that same boat up the river?
Mm-hmm.
To engineer, do you understand how insane that is to engineer a ship that can cross the ocean and go up a river? Like
it's a feat of engineering.
It's incredible.
But they were naked savages. They were pagans. They can't do that.
Yeah. they figured out how to use, and we've now proven this. It for some years it was said that this was like this unprovable thing, but they had this thing. I think it was called like the Sunstone,
Mm-hmm.
and they figured out with this stone that you could basically cast shadows even in like overcast weather, so you could navigate with that, because they would basically balance. They would basically have like a compass type thing. It wasn't using magnets, but it was similar to that. And you had to have a shadow to be able to use it so that you could know how far north or south you are. And when they didn't have the sun, they had the stone they could recognize as, if you cut it a certain way or polish it a certain way, you could just hold it up, and no matter how cloudy it is, the sun will shine through that. What was some other crazy stuff that I was reading about that they did engineering wise, right? So they didn't write down their history, right? Which I'll take that hit, right? They weren't writing down their history. They had like runes that they could.
Well, here's the thing, though. People have said they didn't write down their history. That's not actually historically correct. They wrote down their history, but they wrote it on bark, and bark decays extremely quickly, whereas the more sophisticated materials that they were using in other places, like paper, like China has been writing on paper for centuries. They were able to record things that lasted millennia because they had a very sophisticated material, a very sophisticated medium, much more sophisticated than, for example, the papyrus in Egypt, which is a very primitive form of paper. The reason papyri exists today isn't because papyrus is so advanced technologically. It's simply because Egypt is very dry. So the same technology that the Scandinavians and the Germans were writing runes on bark, that would have survived in a very dry climate like Egypt. It just didn't, because it was in Scandinavia and Germany, which are very wet climates.
Yeah.
So it's not that they were illiterate savages who couldn't write things down. That's a very incorrect.
Right.
It's actually a Victorian invention that these people were primitive, because during the Victorian era, you had a huge lapse in education and in cleanliness standards. And so they had to reinvent and lie about their history to make it seem like people before the Victorian period were just naked savages dancing around campfires, because otherwise it would make the Victorian era seem much less magnificent by comparison. And that's for a reason. And it's because the Victorian era, even with all of its technological advances, in a lot of ways culturally, it was a step down from the people who had come before.
So all that to say, like, we know that I'm using Scandinavians as an example because a lot of the time Scandinavians are used as this example of white people being naked savages, right? Like I'm sure you've heard that before.
Mm-hmm.
Like it's not the same as like continental Europe, right? Where it's like Germany and France and whatever, and like those are the more sophisticated savages. But like, the Picts in England were just like sitting in bogs, like, which is pretty funny because that's how the Romans would write about them. They just sit in a bog all day. They don't do
And where are the Picts today? They didn't make it.
Mm-hmm. I thought no, they interbred for sure.
Well, yeah, there's the Pictish massacres they did happen, but there was not necessarily a Pictish genocide. The people of Northern Europe are intermarried.
I have at least one Pict ancestor,
mm-hmm.
like some guy that I found doing that crazy Mormon site. But anyways, the naked savages thing. Do you believe that Vikings were running around naked up in Scandinavia? Do you really believe that was happening? Come on, Joel Berry. You know how hard it is to exist.
Maybe during July, but
yeah, maybe
not in December when the sun literally doesn't come out.
Yeah, it's just I'm trying to wrap my head around that. Like that, it's notorious. It's so hard to exist in an environment like that black people have tried to cope with low IQ by saying that, oh, well, white people just developed in a harsher environment, and so they had to think harder, and that's why they evolved to be smarter or whatever. Well, first of all, that's not a great, I mean, even if that's true, that still doesn't look good. Like, I don't know why they try to use that as an argument, because they'll try to say, like, well, in Africa it's so easy to live that these people didn't develop the kind of thinking that you would need, like, to plan ahead. You don't have to plan
there
ahead.
There are no harsh Darwinian pressures, to use the technical terminology. Yeah.
Right. In fact, what ironically, the white people like our buddy Audie who live in Africa have to be very technologically savvy, and they live in a very harsh condition because they live amongst blacks. Like, that's the thing that makes the environment harsh for them. That's why they have to have these crazy, like, gate
security
systems.
Fences.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
It's insane. But all that to say, there is no way you could look at Vikings and say those are naked savages, because it was way too cold to be naked, Joel. Just think about what you're saying, right? Mm-hmm. The houses and the way of making fires that they would have to do to keep themselves warm, right? They didn't have gas heaters, obviously, but they figured it out. They figured out how to make a shelter that could last all year long. They had, I mean, like I said, engineering-wise, like, the boats that they made are just insane. Like, they would just have these two long poles that would somehow make it so that the ship could bend but not break, and so it didn't have to be, like, super deep the way that other areas would travel oceans. They just had it to where it would, like, do this bendy thing because it didn't have, like, a center piece of wood. Oh, dude, it's crazy. I can't even wrap my head around it, dude.
Yeah.
Not naked savage.
Another argument that people like Joel Berry will bring up is they'll say, oh, well, Europeans were nothing until the advent of Christianity. Christianity came and saved them from their naked savage ways. And I don't want to undersell the importance of Christianity. But the thing is, Greeks were building marble mausoleums, museums, colosseums, anything that ends with an which is a fantastic structure today. Greeks were making that 1,000 years, well, maybe not 1,000, but hundreds of years before they became Christian. Okay, Christianity does not make you smart. Okay, the Scandinavians, were their lives greatly improved by Christianity? Absolutely. Africans' lives have been greatly improved by becoming Christian. But Christianity did not make the Scandinavians invent Viking longships. And Christianity has not made Africans in Africa today into astronauts. That's not what Christianity does. Christianity saves your soul. That's what it's about. And these people who try to make Christianity into, oh, well, civilization didn't happen until Christianity. The reason they say that is because they worship civilization. They think, they are materialists. They believe that civilization is salvation. And that if you live in a primitive grass hut, that you're somehow not a Christian. Or that if you are a Christian, you can't live in a mud hut. And that's just not the way that God made the world. People adapt to the situations they are in, and they do just fine. Africans don't have to be smart, so don't try to make them into astronauts. Let them be happy little Africans in Africa. There's nothing wrong with that. They're beautiful just the way God made them. Stop trying to make them something they are. Stop trying to destroy them and make them in your own image, you racist. Let them be what they are. So let's hit comments again, and then I've got two little things before we close out. Yellow Moth says, most of the Native American culture we saw on TV was made up by a Jewish guy pretending to be an Indian. Yeah, I mean, a lot of the culture, the Native American culture that we receive from Hollywood is completely fabricated. intentionally fabricated, because if you want to tell a good story, fiction is always more entertaining than real life.
There's
So
a
they've
really
got
funny there's a really funny example of what he's talking about. It wasn't a Jewish guy, but in in what was it, Star Trek Voyager, um, there's a guy who's supposed to be like the Native American guy, and
Mhm.
he literally just made stuff up, and he didn't
Right.
tell anyone he was making it up, but like Native Americans found like later they were like, why what is this based off of that he's doing? Because he would do this thing where he would just like show up and say like, oh Kuchimoya, like it was like this thing that he would do in his like kind of incense or
His
whatever he would
Indian
have.
Sundance thing. Yeah.
And oh, the Yellow Moss saying a Jewish guy was a consultant for Voyager. I don't know, but it was like it ended up being like a Mexican. Like it was just like a Mexican
Mhm.
dude. It's like, I am a Native American. I can teach you my ways for this show. like that was what he
Yeah.
did, and he got away with it. It just
And he
insane.
made a ton of money doing it, and that's why he did it. Yeah.
Yep.
Check for Tunnel says Joel is subverting. It's not an accident that nation has lost its meaning. Joel's nation has a stake in it losing its meaning. And yeah, that is correct. Joel has a personal vested interest in you not having a country. That's why he wants you to not have a country. Yellow Moss says, by pants, I believe you mean lederhosen. Very fashionable. No, I mean, the red check. You know how in Scandinavian American countries, loggers wear the red and black checkered jackets? That goes all the way back to the time of the Romans. There are paintings of Romans fighting pagan savages, these Germanic, what they call Germani, these tribal people, and they're running out there with a big long yellow beard. They've got a metal helmet, an axe, and they're wearing black and red checkered pants because that's what they wore. That heritage that those Scandinavian, your Minnesotan cousin who's a lumberjack and he wears that red and black checkered felt wool shirt, that goes all the way back to the time of the Romans. They invented trousers, and Romans and Greeks famously detested trousers. They're like, what are these pagans wearing pants? We don't wear pants, we wear togas. We wear kilt, or they didn't call it a kilt, but the short, whatever the thing is that's shorter than a toga. Yellow Moss says, I'm just going to sit in a bog all day tomorrow. Are you in?
Dude, you know what? Honestly, like bog and beers sounds like a pretty decent day.
Sounds like a good time.
I think I would do that. Yeah.
Yellow Moss says, Nordic boats are so well made that Odysseus used one on his journey back from Troy. That's right. The gay, furry porn movie that Nolan made is just ridiculous. He used a Viking longship. Greece owns a boat that is made to replicate the boat that Odysseus would have been on. And it is a black hull vessel. It is not a Viking longship. It has never been a Viking longship. And Nolan went out of his way to get a Viking longship instead of the black hull vessel that Greece had that he would have been able to get because I guess he wanted it to look like a Viking longship. I mean, they are cool. I will give them that. They are cool. But Yilmaz says the Jewish guy was a consultant for Voyager. Yeah, I mean, in many such cases, I'm sure. But during the 70s, there was like this whole cultural resurgence of like the Native American, and it came out because of the whole Dances with Wolves, which was written by a white guy, a self-hating white
Dances
guy.
with Wolves was in the 90s.
Was it? But the book came out before.
Oh,
that.
I don't know. Yeah.
But yeah, I mean the whole idea of Native Americans were actually really good people. They're completely misunderstood, and they had these complex cultures, and some of them did. I mean, but the thing is, a lot of those cultures died before Europeans landed in the New World. If you're interested in Native American history, Aidan Mattis from the Lore Lodge is just a brilliant resource for what the Native American people of the United States and Canada were like. And the Mississippi culture were a people with, they had metallurgy, they had textiles. They were a developed civilization, and they imploded. They completely collapsed, and led to the development of the Iroquois and the Cherokee and these different, Eastern tribes people that then, some of them later got pushed across the Mississippi into the West with displacement. But they were a shadow of their former selves. They were naked savages dancing around campfires, but their ancestors weren't. And that does happen. That is observable, that some civilizations collapse and their descendants never live up to what they used to be. Very interesting history if you're into that kind of thing. But anyhow, I had one more tweet that I wanted to go over, and this is from Gabriel Hughes. And this all started because he said that if you have Patriot Front members in your church, then you should excommunicate them. Post which he has now since deleted because people were asking why, and he didn't seem to be able to have a reason for it. But anyway, he posts this picture from Patriot Front about what they believe. He says they root their patriotism and national citizenship in a white European ethnicity favored above others. The only true Americans are, quote, members of the European race. This is antithetical to the gospel in Christ's church. Dude, that's incredible. What Americans are is defined in the gospel. That's really news for me. That's a big deal. Galatians 3:28, Colossians 3:11, James 2:1. So evidently Galatians, Colossians, and James say that Americans are not white, and saying they are sends you to hell. And he posts this picture where they talk about American history has been corrupted by liberals and conservatives alike. A nation is a unified people of common ancestry, their culture, and the land they inhabit. Sounds like what we just read in the dictionary. Collective liberty demands our survival as a nation and national sovereignty, outlines a government which both protects our liberty and leads the nation forward. Okay. Our nation is European in racial character, and thus all Americans, either native or naturalized, are members of the European race. So what they're saying, they're not saying that you can't come here and become American. They're just saying that when you do, you become European. And Sam says, yeah, I don't see anything in those passages about who is and isn't an American, just about how anyone can be a Christian. While I agree American and Christian are closely related categories, I have to inform you that they are actually distinct. And then he retweets something that he says differently, where, he says people shouldn't be based on the color of their skin or ancestry. And yada, 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 yada. And it culminates in him taking this quote, nor should it be permitted for anyone else to draw such prejudiced distinctions. You think it's okay for people in church to point at one another and say you cannot be an American citizen due to your skin color or ancestry? That's not racist? Question mark, question mark, question mark. And I just rephrased it a little bit to ask the question. I said, you think it's okay for people in church to point at one another and say you cannot be a girl due to your genitalia or in what sex you were assigned at birth? That's not sexist? And the point that I'm making here is you are what you are. God made you what you are, and you can't change that. The Bible literally says, can the Ethiopian change his skin or the leopard change his spots? And the answer is no. It's a rhetorical question. No, God made the Ethiopian an Ethiopian, and he didn't make a mistake when he did so. He did it on purpose. And he wants you, if he made you an Ethiopian, he wants you to be the best little Christian Ethiopian that ever was. And if he made you a white European, he wants you to be the best white European Christian that ever was. This is not about, the gospel is not about who can be an American. Who can be an American was decided by who your parents are. And if they're not American, you're not American. If your parents are not French, you are not French. And you cannot become French just because you can kick a ball really hard. that doesn't make you French. That makes you a really good Cameroonian footballer. That makes you an excellent Botswanan footballer. You are not French just because you can play on the French national team if you are African.
I'm tired of them making this a moral question of American citizenship, right? You're saying this guy can't be an American? That's the most hateful thing that you could say, is that somebody's not an American.
Yeah, you're going to hell because you said that person's not an American.
Yeah, what? Why is it a moral blight on my person? Why is it sin for me to define an American in the way, not like, forget the history of it, right? Like, it's one strike against these pastors and I guess pastor adjacent type people who they don't like the definition that has existed for forever, right? Me agreeing with my ancestors on what an American is, but also just common sense, dude. Like, there is a such thing as an American, and it's not just the people who happen to have shown up recently. One check, not the only one, but me and Jeff have referred to this in the past, is that we have nowhere else to go. Mm-hmm. There is no open door sitting in Norway where they're like, dude, you're like 47% Norwegian. Come on in. Like, they don't care about that. There was a famous, I guess about as famous as 4chan threads can go, but it was a 4chan thread, and they were just saying that, this guy, I think that the example actually was Norway, and he went to visit or whatever. And he was telling these guys, hey, I'm Norwegian. And they're like, no, you're not, dude. You're an American. Like, as in, you cannot be what we are. Not trying to say, no, have pride in being an American. He's saying, don't have pride in being Norwegian, because we're Norwegian. You are not. I had ridden with we convoyed with a Norwegian army in Afghanistan a couple times, and we were overnight with these guys, shared bunks with them and whatnot, and not shared beds, by the way. I didn't share beds with the guys. Like, it was the tent. Don't lift your eyebrow at me about that. You know what you did. We shared a longhouse. We'll say that. But it was cool because, like, I was telling him, like, yeah, like, ancestry wise, like, I'm Norwegian, but obviously, like, I don't speak Norwegian like these guys do. I didn't, like, culturally, I don't do the things that they do.
I don't eat raw fish.
Right. We it was the same thing when we stayed at a Swedish base, and it was all just, it was, foreign to me because it was not, I mean, blood wise, I'm sure I'm very closely related to some of those guys out there, but as far as being an American, is because the land shaped my ancestors and me, and we became this new thing. So I don't know where I was going with that, but yeah, I'm tired of them making this a moral question of what it means to be a nationality. I'm not less of a human. I'm not less made in the image of God if I am or am not an American. I just don't. I don't know. If someone like one of these guys that we've quoted here today, if they were to say, Sean Russell, you are not an American, I would just be like, I don't care what you think. Like, my credentials are there. I've talked about them on this show before. I'm not going to go over it all again. I don't have to tell you what it means because I don't agree with your post-war consensus liberalism. Is that what makes me non-American? That suddenly my heritage just flew out the window because I stopped believing in your system? That's silly. Come on, dude.
Yeah. Yeah, and that actually does prove a point too, which is the people who say, "Oh, well, America is a country of ideas, so anybody who subscribes to the idea can come here." Okay, so what you're saying then is the kid in California who was born here, whose ancestors go all the way back to the Mayflower, who's a communist and wants to turn America into a communist hellhole, he's not an American. We can go ahead and strip him of his citizenship. These people would immediately say, well, no, you can't do that. I mean, he's just wrong. It's like, well, then American is not an idea. If he's still an American, even if he hates the Constitution and wants to turn us into a communist hellscape, if he's still an American, then it's not an idea, it's an ethnicity. And that's the truth. That's what it is.
And as far as ideas, who defines those ideas? I would say the people, a specific people known as Americans, define those ideas. So like this whole thing, like, well, it's, you know, it's the people who subscribe to these ideas. Where'd those ideas come from? It wasn't like any group of people could have come up with what it means to be an American. Only Americans could do that. No other people in the world could come up with the insane things that we as a people came up with that define us, right? Like that's why it's such a big, you know, I was talking about guns earlier. That's a big part of our culture. It's a big part of who we are. We deserve to be able to have weapons of war. We need to be individual soldiers in and of ourselves at any given time. We have to be able to defend ourselves and our families. That's a part of who we are. If
that's a part of our inheritance,
right?
It comes from our fathers. It comes from our heritage. It's in our blood.
Yeah. And we don't care that you don't like that, foreigner. Right? That's cool. Do your foreigner thing where you outlaw butter knives and all that jazz. That's your bag, dude. That's not us. Like we have a thing, you know, all the vast majority of these people who get themselves into politics and they get elected and they start talking about, we're going to take your guns away and all this. They're always foreigners because they did not have that moment in time where the land shaped them and their ancestors into an American. They come from like Mexico or whatever, and they're just like, oh,
or the Middle East or Europe. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yep.
India. Mm-hmm. Oh, it's insane that people have guns. Or Somalia, where they're running around with AK-47s, shooting them like this, doing this number. Have you ever seen that? The photo where they hold it like way up.
That's not just a Hollywood thing. That's a real thing.
Yeah, they really do that.
Yeah.
Skinnies.
All right. Well, one last thing to close it out, and that's a meme.
Yeah.
And this is just something I ran across about the gay black tranny movie that came out this weekend. Progressive director. Here's a picture of Christopher Nolan. I could not pick Christopher Nolan out of a lineup. I don't know what he looks like.
Nor could I.
But I know from the context that that's Christopher Nolan. It says, makes a film set in ancient Greece, doesn't cast a single Greek. The cast is as diverse as downtown LA. Racist director, and it's a picture of Mel Gibson. Makes a film set in pre-colonial Mexico. Only hires indigenous actors, has them all speak Mayan. Yep. Because to study race is to appreciate race. And the thing that the anti-racists don't realize is that the reason these people are interested in different ethnicities is because they actually like them. Heaven forbid that we actually like these different people and we want them to remain what they are instead of turning them into English-speaking little mimic copies, little insignificant and half-hearted copies of Englishmen all around the world. Let all of the cultures blossom in their own way. Let them speak their own click-clack languages, because it's kind of cool. And we don't need to import infinity Benamalians to the United States to turn the United States into the country that they just fled. Let them live where they're from. Let them thrive in their own societies, and let us do the same. That's all we want to do. Is that too much to ask? So, with that being said, any final thoughts, Sean?
No, I really lit everything out throughout the episode. So
all right.
Good. Oh, you know what? Actually, I take that back. I did write down one thing. I always take my little notes that I have here. There was when I was in high school, my senior year, I took an elective class because I needed the credits and I kind of had senioritis, so I didn't really want to do anything serious. So I did a class called Teacher's Aid, and what I got assigned to ended up being the school library. So I was an aide for the school library, and we had an awesome library because it was like nothing new. It was all just classics, and it was just amazing, dude. But I remember getting really obsessed with certain biographies that would be on like the back of a book or in the like the inner leaflet or something like that. And in a lot of these classics, it's like a recent immigrant to the U.S. This is like in the 1800s, but like a recent immigrant to the U.S. from Ireland. And so they would have the biography would say that, you know, this guy was an Irish-American poet who lived whatever, you know what I mean? So they had a lot of these like hyphenated American things. And I remember like in high school, like I would read that and be like, wow, when I'm an author, I'm going to like, what kind of hyphenated American am I going to be? Because I don't just want to be a generic American, right? Because, you know, you're growing up, you're told like you
being
like,
a plain old American is boring,
or it doesn't exist and it's offensive for you to say that it exists. To just be a non-hyphenated, there is no such thing as that. There's no such thing as just a default American or a heritage American, right? Like that's the way that I was taught growing up. So I was like, well, what kind of American am I? Like, how am I going to be diverse, right? It, you know, to not bury the lead, like I now understand, like, no, I'm just an American. Like, yeah, I can look, you know, obviously I know through the advent of DNA testing and things like family trees and whatever, I can look into that history and know where I come from if I go far enough back. But like there is a such thing as just an American, a non-hyphenated American. The American people exist, and we have the right to exist, and we have the right to assert ourselves as existing. You can't just write us out. There's so much that can be said about that. If some historian 1,000 years in the future was looking back at us right now, and they were, you know, they're a anthropologist or whatever the term would be, and they were to define the American people, he would not be doing his job if he couldn't come up with like, what did they eat? What was their language like? You know, what was their music like? All these kind of things. Like, if you can't just like look back at like Roman history, and if you wanted to know about Roman history, what was life in ancient Rome like? Well, how could you even ask that question? Everyone's an individual. I mean, they all did things differently, right? Like they, you know, the smallest minorities, the individual kind of thing. But no, of course you could look back at those times and say these were cultural things. Like culture cannot exist if you cannot define the boundaries of that culture. If you cannot define the people whom that culture comes from. So Americans exist. We have the right to exist. We are asserting that we exist as a nation, as a people. I'm fully okay with, you know, like I said, our Southern nationalist friends who will say that, well, the American people don't exist, but like the Southern people exist. Well, I understand what you mean by that. And I would say that that is a subgroup of a greater group, but that's fine. That's a very semantic thing.
Just like Scandinavian can be made up of Danish, Swede, and Finns, right. And who am I missing? Swiss, no, Swede, Finns,
Norway, and Sweden would be Scandinavia. Scandinavia is the peninsula, from what I understand. And then you could say the Nordic peoples would include the Danes and Finns.
Yeah, I mean, all of these people make up Scandinavian largely, but specifically, you have subgroups within that, such as the Norse and the Swedes and the Danes. But then you also have even subgroups within those groups. Sweden has more than one ethnicity. Norway has more than one ethnicity. The Danes are fairly homogeneous. But America is like that too.
Mm-hmm. Somebody showed in our group, it was the periodic table of the elements by what country discovered each element. So like some of them was like copper, gold, or silver would be like, okay, this is known by the ancients, it doesn't count. But it was like 19 for Sweden and there was 0 for Norway, and I was like, well, that's bizarre. Why would that be? And it was pointed out that before 1905, it was all Sweden. And so how can you say the Norwegian people exist if it's all just in one country? So I guess what I'm saying is, like, I agree with the Southern nationalist people saying that there is within the American people a distinct people known as the Southern or
the Southerners.
Southern, mm-hmm. The Southerner.
Yeah. Well, and I would make a strong argument that Texan is a distinct ethnicity within the United States as well. Yeah.
Sure. Yeah.
But anyhow, before we go, I had one thing that I wanted to say, and this is a little bit belated. I forgot to do it earlier in the show, but a friend of ours, friend of the show, reached out, and he has a company called Sockeye Brewing Company, or Sockeye Grooming Company. I mean,
no, do not drink that.
Yeah, do not drink this. He may have a brewing company for all I know. But anyhow, I bought some beard oil from him and some natural deodorant, which we are crunchy at this household. We do the natural deodorant thing, and he sent me some little samples of these different things he's got. He's got these different beard oil smells. He's got Denali and what is this one? Journeyman. That one there. That one was my wife's favorite. Cowtown, which this literally Cowtown, guys, if you have ever walked into a Cavender's, I don't know what this is, dude. But Chris, you nailed it. This is what a Cavender's smells like. When you walk into Cavender's, this is the smell. And I love it. I love it, man. But this one here, it's called Blue River. And my mom used to wear a perfume called Cool Blue. And I liked it so much that when I got married, I bought it for my wife. And she'll wear it every once in a while. And dude, I don't know how you pulled this off, but Blue River smells just like Cool Blue, which is a very expensive French perfume. So whatever magic juju you found in there, that I don't know how you pulled it off, but you figured out the $1 million question. But to me, my favorite is the Cowtown one, and my wife really likes the Journeyman. And she actually likes the Journeyman and the Denali. But yeah, very cool. Thank you for sending those little samples. I have used a little bit of beard oil, and it was noticeably different. But appreciate that, Chris. Sockeye Beard Company, for any of y'all who are looking for it. He's got an Etsy shop, and very, very cool stuff. Support friends of the channel. Very, very much appreciated. But closing thoughts for me, what is a nation? A nation is a people. And I really liked that definitional breakdown. There's a people, which is the nation. There's a land, which is the country. And then there's a government, which is the state. And when people ask, what is a nation? The answer is the nation is the people, and the people make the nation. So with that said, it is getting late. It is time for us to go to bed. We've had a 2.5-hour show, but it was a good show. It was a good thing to kind of suss out and figure out. But we appreciate all of y'all for hanging out as long as you did. But now it's time for you to go to bed. because tomorrow's a day that God has prepared good works for you to do, and you need to get some rest so that you can do it. But for those who are father supporters, we will have a follow-up show after this. Link is in the Telegram group if you are a supporter of the show. If you would like to become a supporter of the show, the link is in the description, buymeacoffee.com/stroke for future generations. We'd appreciate that if you're able to do so. And if not, that is perfectly all right. But we really appreciate, the best thing that you can do is give this a like, give it a share on social media, show it to your friends. And when people ask you, what is a nation, send them this video and say, hey, these guys had some thoughts. What do you think? What do you think a nation is? But yeah, we really appreciate that. Get the word out, because we're fighting for our existence. We all are. I mean, everybody who has a nation, your nation is under fire right now from the global homo elite who want to dissolve all nations and turn us into the Tower of Babel. And God was not pleased with that when it happened the first time. And I don't think he's very happy with it now. So with that said, folks, hope you have a wonderful night. We'll see you next week, and farewell.